I'm going to share with you guys the ingredients. I'm going to take you through the process. It's all going to come together in about a half of an hour. So let's get going. Let me share all of this with you guys. And before I start, if you want to switch up any of the ingredients in this, it's very, very simple to do. So if you don't want to use shrimp, you can use chicken instead. You can use fish instead. A white fish would go really well with this recipe. I probably wouldn't do steak with the breading, but definitely a white fish, definitely a chicken. You could even try it with tofu as well. It's I use a similar method to baking tofu as well. You just want to make sure it is pressed and really dry. So I just wanted to give you guys a couple options before I share this with you guys. All right, let's jump in. I was trying to think if there was anything else I wanted to share with you. This is such a simple recipe, but it's so delicious, and we will talk about why the flavors work so well together. So we are gonna start with about a pound to a pound and a half. I've got a pound and a half because I'm serving about 6 people tonight. Yes, 6 adults and then tiny humans as well. 4 adults and 5 adults and 2 tiny humans, that's 7. That's 7. So I've got about a pound and a half. This is peeled and deveined shrimp. My favorite is the wild Argentinian shrimp from Trader Joe's. If you don't have a Trader Joe's near you, just look for peeled, deveined, and defrosted shrimp. Now the most important part of this shrimp, if we want to get it crispy, because it is going to be grain-free, we're going to be using almond flour. You're welcome to use breadcrumbs instead. It'll work the same way. We want to make sure that they are nice and dry. So I took them out of I defrosted them, took them out of the package. I put them on paper towels, and I'm going to dry them again really well with some paper towels. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that on top. We will dry that really well before we do the breading. So like I said, this is a grain-free breading, so it is inherently gluten-free. I'm using almond flour, which is my favorite substitute for breadcrumbs. It's just naturally gluten-free because it's made from almonds, and it's a little bit higher in nutrients too. So that is what I'm using today, but you can use plain or panko breadcrumbs. Panko breadcrumbs are going to have more texture to them than almond flour or regular breadcrumbs, but you're welcome to use those instead. So I'm going to be using almond flour. I'm going to be using my homemade taco seasoning. This recipe is on my website, healthymamakris.com. It is so simple. I always have a batch around. I share it with friends. It is delicious, and it's not crazy spicy. You can always up the spice if you like it with some cayenne pepper, but I don't even put any cayenne pepper in it, so it's very kid-friendly. But you can also use whatever taco seasoning you love as well. Obviously, some sea salt over here, and those are our main breading ingredients. And then you're going to need an egg. If you don't want to use an egg, you can also use a little bit of oil. That will also work for the breading, or a flax egg, so that will work as well. For the honey lime slaw that we are going to serve it with, you're going to need some sort of a mayonnaise. This is I think it's a sunflower based mayonnaise, but I like to make my own, but sometimes it's easier to just grab something, so this one's pretty good. My favorite is the Chosen Foods or the Primal Kitchen, if you guys are wondering, my favorite avocado oil mayonnaise. I was just trying this one out. It's pretty good. So whatever your favorite mayonnaise is, some honey, of course. I don't use a super fancy honey because, I'm not using it for like allergies or anything. I'm just using it for cooking. You're going to need at least 1 lime, and you're going to want to make sure it's a nice and juicy lime if you can. And so you just want to be able to, when you squeeze it, you just want it to give a little bit. And then of course you're gonna need some sort of a slaw mix. I'm just using a classic slaw mix from Aldi. I love the ones with purple cabbage in them because they add a little bit more color. Sometimes I'll just do some shredded purple cabbage, carrots, and just kind of call it. But you can use whatever sort of slaw mix you want. That's for the honey lime slaw. And then some sort of tortillas. We're keeping these grain-free today, so we're using almond flour tortillas. This is my favorite brand. But I did just try the Whole Foods 365 brand yesterday, and the kids love them. I love them. They were delicious. So they're a good option as well, and I think they're a little bit less expensive than the CFJ Foods as well if you want to go grain-free. If not, use whatever tortillas you love. You can use corn tortillas, you can use flour tortillas, use whatever you've got and whatever is available. And then for serving, I love serving them up with some cilantro, some fresh cilantro, and this is my favorite way to store fresh cilantro. It just keeps it a little bit longer. There's some water in the bottom of the jar, and avocado. And there's my avocado. Just some fresh avocado. So let's go ahead and let's get started. Let's create the breading for this. There's a couple ways that you can actually cook these up. So I am going to use the oven method, and my favorite way to bake these up in the oven is by using a rack. Okay, so you can use, yes, Yes, my cookie sheet is a little bit worse for the wear right now, but it still works. So I just put a rack on top of the cookie sheet. So this can be a roasting rack, this can be a baking rack, it can be whatever sort of rack you want. Or you can also use parchment paper if you want to bake it in the oven as well. They don't get as crispy with the parchment paper because they can't fully, the air won't fully circulate around it. So I do prefer the rack method, but if you don't have a rack, that's okay. Parchment paper works really well. You can also pan sear these in a little bit of oil as well if you would like, but it does take a little bit longer because you do want to do it in batches. Whenever you want something crispy, I've talked about this before, but I just want to reiterate, if you want something to be crispy or something to be browned, it needs to have enough room in order for that reaction to happen. So you definitely don't want to crowd it. So with this much, if you're using a pound or a pound and a half of shrimp, you're going to do it in a couple of batches. So I'm going to use the baking method because I can put it all on there all at once, and let's get started. So I preheated my oven to 375. I don't like to use too high a heat when it comes to any sort of, well, that's not true. I typically don't like to use a very high heat when it comes to seafood, especially shrimp, because you don't want it to turn rubbery. Nobody likes rubbery shrimp. All I'm doing over here, you guys, is just patting this really dry. But I will use high heat sometimes when I'm only cooking something very briefly. But today it's going to cook for about 15 minutes. So my shrimp is nice and patted dry, and I'm just going to rinse my hands really quick because shrimp. And then we're going to get going with our breading. Okay. Just a quick rinse over here, and let's get our breading together. So I'm going to use about a cup. I don't know if you guys know this. I was thinking about this on the way up today. I don't ever have a recipe in front of me when I'm teaching you guys on these Cook with Kris. So if the recipe I share with you after is ever slightly different, that's just because I'm literally riffing every single time. So I'm going to use about a cup of almond flour over here and about a tablespoon and all of these recipes, by the way, that I share with you guys, I've been making for at least several months, if not years. So I'm not just flying by the seat of my pants. I promise I have culinary training. So I'm going to use about a tablespoon of that taco seasoning. This is if you're just hopping on, my homemade taco seasoning, but you can use whatever taco seasoning you love. But that recipe is on my website, healthymamakris.com. It's actually one of my most popular recipes, probably because I use it in my Tex-Mex turkey taco pie, which is one of my most popular recipes, or is my most popular recipe. But I'm just going to go ahead and whisk that up. I'm going to use a tiny pinch of salt, but these are, the taco seasoning is already salted. So if your taco seasoning you're using is not salted, then you might want to add a little bit more salt. I'm just using a pinch, but this is the only seasoning that is going on this shrimp. So you definitely want to make sure it is well seasoned. And remember, this is quite a bit more than you're actually even going to need to bread the shrimp. So it's okay to slightly over salt a breading because you're not going to be using all of it. You want an abundance of breading because you want to have the room in the bowl. And this is just a wide bowl that I'm using over here. The wider the better, so there's space to bread. Because you're not going to be using all of it, and you want it to be able to fully coat the shrimp. So I've got my breading done over here, and I'm going to go ahead and crack an egg in. Whenever you're cracking an egg, you always want to crack, I think I shared this when I shared carbonara, on the side, or not on the side, on the counter. So I'm just going to crack my egg in there, and I'm going to whisk that up. So if any of you are not familiar with the breading method, I don't even know what you would call it. I don't remember what they call it. The breading method is not it. But with breading in a way that's clean and it isn't going to create a giant mess, I'm going to share with you guys today. So, I mean, this is still shrimp, right? Any sort of protein, you're still probably going to get a little bit messy. But I'm going to share with you what we're going to do. So one hand is wet, one hand is dry. And I have my pan over here ready to go, and that's how we're doing this, okay? So this is my wet hand, and my dry hand is never going to touch this area. I mean, we're going to hope it's not going to. And so this is something you can teach the kids too. You can have the kids help you with this. I love having kids help me whenever I do any sort of breading. One of the recipes that we make the most often. So I'm tossing just enough to coat these in here. Sorry, just enough to coat doesn't make sense. I'm tossing just enough in here so I can still flip them and coat all of them is what I'm trying to say. So in my bowl, mine's a wide bowl. We all have different size bowls, but I've got about, I don't know, 7 shrimp in here. So my kids love helping me make homemade chicken tenders, and they'll help me with the breading over here as well. So I'm gonna use my fork to transfer over, but I'm not using my hands, okay? So you are welcome to always use a utensil when you do this, but I recommend using your hands. Your hands are just, it's just gonna be easier. So if you don't wanna get messy, you can absolutely use a fork, but you definitely don't wanna overcrowd these because you really wanna fully coat them. So I'll use a fork to not be too messy, but I'm just going over here. I don't know if you can see this, so I'm gonna go ahead and share with you. I guess I'm just gonna chat with you guys as I do this. You just wanna flip them over so they're fully coated, but you don't need to go crazy with them, okay? That's it, that's done. So I'm gonna take that and put it on the rack, and we just wanna make sure they're spaced out because again, we wanna make sure that they're actually going to get crispy. Now, these aren't gonna be crispy like you fried them. Now, you could absolutely put these in the air fryer. I do not have an air fryer. I know, everyone's shocked. I don't like a lot of appliances. I'm still debating. I think I should put a poll up in my stories and see if you guys want me to start creating air fryer recipes. I don't know, they feel so trendy, but I don't know if everyone actually has one. Or I know most people have an Instant Pot at this point. I love making Instant Pot recipes because we use that thing like several times a week. Especially during my meal prep, I'll use the Instant Pot for beans, I'll use the Instant Pot for shredded chicken, and then soups and stews, especially in the winter time. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I'm sold on the air fryer yet. I'm sure it makes things crispy and delicious, but if you want to use the air fryer, you can absolutely put these in the air fryer, but I do not have instructions for how long, so you're going to need to go ahead and experiment with that. They will get pretty crispy, especially for being grain-free, but it's more of like a breading, rather than, you know, you're like, which fast food place? Burger King? Is Burger King the ones that have the chicken tenders that are like super duper crispy? I feel like it's Burger King. I have not been to... I'm a Chick-fil-A girl, if I'm gonna have that. If I'm gonna have fast food, it's Chick-fil-A. And we only have one in the state, you guys. But I do live in the smallest state, so... All right, and I'm not in the South, so... There's not a lot of Chick-fil-A around here, so I'm just gonna repeat this. And we're gonna chat as I do this. So I might actually not do all of this. I might just fill up my pan, and then I'll finish the rest of this later. But I'm going back to my other fork over here, okay? Wet hand, dry hand. This really does make a difference because then your wet hand, so the egg mixture is never ending up in the breading mixture. Obviously, some of it is going to transfer over from, you know, just the shrimp being in there, but it doesn't get all super clumpy, and it keeps it nice and fluffy so that your breading actually stays, and you don't have to you shouldn't have to refill your breading, which tends to be a problem when you're breading anything, right? So that's what we're doing over here, and this breading method, whatever we want to call it, it works for literally anything you're gonna bread. So that's really the only technique that I'm sharing with you guys today. These are pretty simple. But the flavors are incredible. So, you know, we've got the chili seasoning going on. There we go. We've got the chili seasoning going on with the almond flour in the breading for the shrimp. I don't know how to get Instagram to not try and shut me off, so I'm sorry if I'm poking at the screen. In the fall, we're going to have some full-length cooking classes. I already alluded to that, but you guys, it's happening. And those will be on Zoom, so there will be less poking on the screen. So I'm excited for those. So anyway, chili. So we've got some chili powder happening, or the taco seasoning, so a little bit of chili powder, so a little bit of heat, but not so much that these aren't kid friendly, happening over on the shrimp. So you've got our chili shrimp over here, and then the honey lime slaw that we're gonna make is a really, really beautiful complement to the shrimp that has a little bit of kick to it. And I forgot to mention, if you want to make these shrimp, say it's just you and your husband or a friend or whoever who's going to be eating this, and you guys like a little bit of spice, especially if you're using my homemade taco seasoning and you didn't add any cayenne to it, feel free to add some cayenne, add a little bit of heat to it if you want. Of course, you could always add like a hot sauce or something like that at the end as well if you wanted a little bit more heat, but you know, you do you and make it tasty for your own taste buds. But there is a beautiful contrast between the shrimp that's just got a little bit of spice to it, in the honey lime slaw. So we've talked about the 3 flavor factors: taste, texture, and temperature. And these tacos have all 3. So they have variety and balance is what we're always going for in cooking, right? So our taste buds love variety and balance. So they love variety and balance in taste, texture, and temperature. So we've got that variety and taste over here with the, and balance. We're balancing it out too because we've got the spicy, but then we have the cooling, creamy mayonnaise and lime juice, and then the sweet honey. And then you also have the contrast in texture. You have the soft tortilla, you have the slightly crispy shrimp, you have the fresh and crunchy slaw, and then of course you also have variation in temperature. If you're cooking this right before, you're going to serve it up, or we're not eating at 3 o'clock, so it'll be a little bit later for us. But we're gonna heat the shrimp up again, and I'll just lightly heat them up in the oven afterwards just to keep them crispy. But you've got the hot shrimp with the cool slaw, and I like to warm my tortillas, so the warm tortillas, and then you're topping that with a cilantro that's a little bit cool. You might want to top it with a little bit more lime juice. You've got the creamy and cool avocado, so you've got the different textures there. So taste, texture, and temperature is where it's at. If you are learning to cook and you are learning to create food that's more satisfying and enjoyable, then focus on those 3 things, right? Or focus on one at a time. We don't need to focus on all 3 because that can feel a little bit overwhelming. Cooking does not need to feel overwhelming though. I've been creating recipes for over a decade now, and I know it was really intimidating in the beginning to go like, where do you even start with something like this? Because I was working as a personal chef, and I was, using some recipes that I had learned in culinary school, and then a few things that I kind of, thrown together because I was trying to really, at the time, we're talking 10, 11 years ago, or 10 years ago now, and gluten-free was not as big a thing, but I had a lot of clients who knew that I had a nutrition background, and some of you have heard this before, but they knew I had a nutrition background, and so they asked me if I could prepare meals for their family who might have had special dietary needs. So I was doing a lot of figuring out how to substitute. Something like almond flour was like $1 million and just not available at the time. So, it could have been available, but it was really, really hard to find for sure. And I would oftentimes get, there was like a health food supplier that I would use that I would get things in bulk from for specialty ingredients like that. Okay, so I am all full. I'm going to finish this later in the interest of time. They're done. Okay, so how long did that take us? Like 15 minutes? Not too long, but I've been chatting. So we're gonna put these in the oven. We're at 375, like I mentioned. Oh, well, that's the wrong oven. That's not gonna work. I'm gonna go ahead and put them in the right oven. All right, and we're putting a timer on over here, you guys, so we don't forget about it. So give me 1 sec. I'm just gonna wash my hands. We'll come back and make that honey lime slaw. So while I gather the ingredients for my honey lime slaw to finish what I was sharing, I was really I started kind of creating substitutions and riffing off of other people's recipes, and I started to create my own recipes. I just went back to those things that I learned in culinary school, right? You learn about the different tastes, right? Your sweet, your salty, your bitter, your umami, your sweet, salty, bitter, sour, umami. You learn about your 5 different tastes, and you learn about how important it is to balance those flavors. But actually, putting it into action is actually simpler than you might think. It sounds like there's so much to it, but it's like, no, it's just about taste, texture, and temperature. Does something feel a little bit overpowering, and how can we take it down a notch by balancing it out or adding in some variety? So I love that, and I believe that everyone can become a really, really great cook if you want to be. And then there's also really delicious, simple recipes like this that you can just learn, and you can look like, you're a little bit fancy, and it didn't take you very much time at all. Okay, I'm gonna stop jabbering away. So those are in the oven, so hopefully they'll be done while we go ahead and make this. We are gonna start, okay, guys, funny story. I'm all about the stories today, apparently. My mom, I'm so proud of her, you guys. She finally got a microplane. For those of you who don't know, I cook at my parents' kitchen because my kitchen is way too tiny. It's just not the best setup for cooking classes. So my mom got a microplane. So I'm on the way up and I'm thinking about the recipe because again, I don't have any recipe in front of me. So I'm thinking about the recipe. I'm rolling out my lime, by the way, because we want to get all of that juice out of there because they are kind of hard limes. And I've got 2 of them, so we're gonna see which one, this one's better. And I'm on the way up and I'm thinking about the recipe and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not using a microplane for this recipe. That's crazy. Yes, I am. And what did I forget at home? My trusty microplane. You guys know that it's my favorite kitchen tool and I use it every single time. But my mom has one now, so we got a microplane. All right, let's start by zesting about half of a lime. It's a honey lime slaw, and the best way to get that lime flavor is from the zest. Oh my gosh. Smells so good. The essential oils are in that zest, okay? So if you're ever wondering, like, where do essential oils come from? Like, true essential oils from citrus come from the zest. And so that is what gives it that beautiful aroma and that beautiful flavor. So I'm using about half of this. Is like an average size lime, I would say, maybe a little bit small, so I might use a little bit more. So we're gonna start by zesting it. The reason we're starting by zesting it is because I would also like to use the juice. So we're gonna zest about half-ish. You know what? That's probably pretty good. I'm gonna zest about half, and I'm just tapping it to get the rest of it off. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and juice it. So this is my favorite tool for juicing. It is not a citrus juicer. It is just a mini, what is it called? Colander. It's just a mini strainer, a mini colander. And I use it for a ton of things. I use it for my lemon water every morning. And you can get them anywhere. You can get them at Target, you can get them on Amazon. They're really inexpensive and they will serve you well in the kitchen. So the only 2 tools I really talk about a lot aside from my knife. I'm not using a knife today though. Look at this. We are cooking an entire cooking class without a chef's knife. That's pretty crazy. But it just means it's simple. This is a very weeknight friendly recipe, you guys. So I'm putting in the juice of 1 whole lime. It's a pretty small lime. If it's a big lime, you might want to just use half, but I'm using 1 whole lime. We can always adjust and add a little bit more if you prefer later. I'm gonna put that aside. I'm gonna go in and grab my mayonnaise. I'm gonna use about half of a cup of mayonnaise. Again, you can use homemade, you can use store-bought, just use your favorite. Not measuring today. I'm just not in the mood. You know, sometimes we're in the mood to measure. I'm usually not in the mood to measure. But I do write recipes, so don't worry. I measure when I write recipes. They get tested several times. And I'm gonna use a little pinch of salt. I'm not using my finger just because they're a little bit limey right now. So we're gonna use a good pinch of salt. You can always add more, so less is more because you can add more. And then I'm gonna add about a tablespoon of honey. Just gonna dump a little of my honey bear out. You could use a half to a full tablespoon, depending on how sweet you like it. We'll do about a half to start, and again, we're gonna taste it. So I'm all about adding just a little bit, and then you can go ahead and taste it and adjust. I've mentioned this before, but I'm gonna say it again, and we're just whisking over here. I'm gonna say it again. When I say season to taste, it is to your taste, okay? That's your taste buds, what you love and what you prefer. So if you're like, ugh, I wouldn't want to add that much lime zest, then don't. It's cool. It's your recipe. So try it out with a little bit less. And then if you're like, oh, Kris was right, I did want more, then add a little bit more. I will never fault you for putting less salt in or more salt in or anything like that. Not that I can see you in your kitchen, but I like to pretend we're all cooking together. We'll cook together in the fall. I'm adding a little bit more mayo because I want it a little bit thicker. And then I'll taste it and we will, yeah, that's perfect. So I like the consistency, kind of like a thick, well, not even a super thick, like kind of like a thick salad dressing over here. We want it to coat the slaw and not run off of it. And I'm just going to taste that. And when you are creating a salad dressing or a dressing for something like a slaw, I don't think it needs any more sweetness. Nope. I'm gonna do a little bit more salt. Here's why. You do want to slightly over salt it. Just a little bit. When you taste it, you want it to taste pretty robust. You want to taste the lime zest. You want to taste the bit of salt because it's going to coat the whole slaw. So a little bit, what you would think is a little bit over salted for your taste buds, when you're tasting the dressings, remember we want to taste as we go, as long as it's safe to taste. Obviously, if it's not safe, don't taste your raw chicken. But if it's safe to taste, by the way, if you do want to taste something that you're making, like a meatball or a burger, or I don't know if I've ever shared this before. It seems obvious, but some people don't do this. So when I'm testing recipes and I don't want to waste the entire recipe, I will take just a tiny little meatball or a tiny piece of chicken or chicken tender, whatever it is, and cook it up on the stove on a pan, and then taste that and then adjust. So yeah, it's important to taste as you go. So sometimes that means you have to cook it ahead. So I'm gonna just add about 3/4 of this, and we're gonna toss it. I'm probably gonna use the whole bag, but I'm gonna go ahead and toss it now. So the reason you want to over season it, I think I mentioned this, but the reason you want to over season it just slightly is because it is going to be coating the entire slaw, and you want the slaw to taste seasoned. Yes, you can always adjust afterwards. If you want to adjust afterwards, you can definitely do it, but it's a lot harder to adjust afterwards than to have it where you're like, oh yeah, this is just like, it's a little bit extra robust, so it's going to be really good. And also with a slaw, any sort of salad that is going to be dressed and fully coated, remember that the ingredients or the vegetables are going to wilt down a little bit, and so it's going to become stronger over time. So if you're not serving it right away, you definitely, it's okay if it feels a little bit dry and maybe a little bit under-seasoned when you taste it all together. We're adding the whole thing. I don't know why I didn't in the first place. I guess it's not a very big bowl either. It's helpful to make sure everything is nice and coated. And we're gonna taste it, and I think it's gonna be pretty good by the time we taste it. And then I'm gonna go and I'm gonna make up my other little shrimpies while we wait for them. And because really, honestly, you guys, the only other things besides the slaw for this recipe are a little bit of cilantro on top and some sliced avocado. And I'm not actually gonna crack open my avocado now. If you guys want help learning how to slice an avocado, leave me a comment down below or send me a DM, and I will teach you how to slice an avocado several different ways later on. But today I don't want the avocado to go brown before we eat dinner later. So my daughter would be very sad. She's the avocado lover in my family. I gotta get her to come on at some point and do her famous guacamole. She's famous for her guacamole in our family, at least. If I ever make the guac, she's a little bit offended. She can probably hear me. She's just upstairs right now, but yeah, Sage makes great guacamole. All right, I'm gonna mix this up, and I'm just gonna give it a little try, and we'll set it aside, and I guarantee you it'll be even more flavorful in about 15 minutes. So good. Little lime, a little sweetness from the honey. It's not too salty, even though I added a little bit more. It's really good, and it's gonna be even better in just a few minutes. So we're gonna go ahead, and we are going to set that aside. And, oh, we only have 4 minutes. We've got 4 minutes left on our shrimp. Good timing. All right, so you guys, it's 2:29, and I was gabbing at the beginning. If I wasn't, this is less than a 30-minute dinner, and it feels fancy. This is a great summer dinner for guests, because actually you can also very easily like have a couple different proteins. It just feels a little bit extra. It feels like a little bit more than you would like typically do for dinner, but it's really not, you know? Maybe the breading's a little bit more than you might do on a typical weeknight, but other than that, it's pretty darn good and pretty darn easy. So I hope you guys will go and try this recipe out for yourselves. I feel like I need a little bit more egg. It would make sense because in the recipe, I told you guys a pound of shrimp, and I'm using 1.5 pounds. So I need another half of an egg, essentially. I'm not gonna do it. It'll be fine. You don't need a lot on here. And now I'm just using my fingers over here because, you know, we're friends now, right? So you guys understand. I'm just serving it to my family, so they're fine. You guys have seen me washing my hands. All right, so while I bread the rest of these and we wait for the first batch of shrimp to come out so I can build a taco for you guys. I don't know who is trying to call me at 2:30 on a Thursday. If it's no one close to me, because everyone close to me knows that I do Cook with Kris on Thursday. It says scam likely, and the same person has tried to call me 3 times, so I'm not sure what's happening today, but that's the thing that's happening. So this is a good time if you guys have any questions. It can be tacos, cooking. Otherwise, we talked about flavors. I'm happy to answer them. So if you guys have any questions while I'm doing this kind of extra breading, I'm just going to pop these in after. Typically, I don't ever do a second batch of these. I just happen to be serving more people tonight because everyone is home tonight. So that's it tonight. All right. We're quiet today. That's okay. I love having you guys on. I love sharing these with you guys. It's a good time to mention that, as always, this recipe will be in my stories after I am live. And so you can go ahead and give that a screenshot. I do not save these. They are special for those who hang out with me live or, watch the replay right after. But yeah, we got some fun cooking classes coming up in the fall. So we only have 2 more Cook with Kris's this month. I can't believe it after this one. And then we're taking a break for the summer because otherwise there will guaranteed be screaming children in the background because it's my husband's already going crazy with his work schedule. So we're going to come back in the fall, bigger and better, and we're going to have some fun stuff coming up. Some of it over on Instagram, some of it over on Zoom. So if you guys are interested in more cooking classes, I'm very excited to share all those with you guys. So the next couple of weeks, we got a minute 30 left. Do you think I can finish these in a minute 30? I don't have very much breading left. I'm going to need to make myself a mini breading. Let's do it. So the next week, I am making some of my favorite lemon basil salmon burgers. They are so good. So I'm making lemon basil salmon burgers. Still doing the wet and the dry. Lemon basil salmon burgers next week. And then the week after, for our last week, I'm going to do a super summer recipe. I'm going to make a caprese salad with a twist. It's kind of an extra fancy caprese salad for your summer dinner parties. So this month is sort of like summer dinner party themed. I've just decided that. That's kind of what I asked you guys to vote. This is all listener? No, I'm podcast mode, you guys. Follower voted this month. And so I guess you guys want some delicious summer dinner party recipes, huh? Me too. Are we all excited to hopefully be able to see more people this summer? Let's all stay healthy and be able to see some friends for dinner parties. I'm here for it. I'm excited. The kids and I just got the patio kind of set up today. So we ate lunch on the patio, which was just so lovely and so exciting because we haven't done that yet. It hasn't quite been warm enough here in New England, and it's just finally beautiful out, and so I am excited for the summer. That's the oven, by the way. The oven sings to me, so I gotta take it out because it will not stop. It's a very persistent oven. All right. Yep, see, I told you. Except I don't want to put shrimp pans on the oven, so. All right. Thank you for serving us, oven. Alrighty, I can't wait to show you guys these. They look so good. Alright, this is wet. That's not smart. Alright, you guys, can we take a look at these? What? Okay, I'm gonna take one and I need a trivet. So, bear with me one sec. Okay. I am going to take one and I'm going to share it with you, and hopefully you can see the texture on this. Again, this is not crispy to, this is not fried crispy. This is baked crispy, but this is also, yes, very hot. Okay, can you see the little crispiness? It's hot. It'll get a little bit crispier as, yes, I need a manicure, as it sits, but they are not, fried crispy, but they are baked crispy. They are amazing, and they are grain-free, which is really cool. So remember that you definitely want to make sure that you are drying your shrimp off before, or they won't get as crispy. They'll still get crispy, just not as crispy. But yeah, these look pretty darn good. And if you want to, mine don't tend to stick to my rack, but I forgot to mention this at the beginning, you might want to do a very light coating of oil. You don't need that if you're using parchment paper. You might want to do a very light coating of oil on your rack so they don't stick. But let's go ahead and make a taco so I can share with you guys how these come together. So let me go ahead and grab a plate. And my slaw. I used the plate because I needed to make extra shrimp. So we're gonna assemble with some Siete Foods tortillas. They don't sponsor me, but I love them. So love you, Siete Foods. My daughter is sensitive to corn, my oldest daughter, so we don't eat a lot of corn in our house. She's not anaphylactic, so she's fine if she eats it. She's not fine if she eats a lot of it, if you know what I mean. So we don't do a lot of corn, so we do a lot of corn-free items in our house. So we are very grateful for Siete Foods. So we've got our tacos now. Typically, yes, I would warm these tacos ever so slightly before, and I typically just warm them in the microwave, stacked on a plate with a damp paper towel on top. And we are gonna go ahead and just add a little bit of slaw to the bottom. You don't want so much that it makes your taco, excuse me, I'm sorry, your taco soggy. And we're gonna add some shrimp to the top of that. Oh, so good. I want this one. Ooh, hello. Okay, this one's fighting back. All right, and we're gonna add a little bit of cilantro to the top from my little cilantro arrangement over here. Can you guys see? Not really. It doesn't matter. You guys know how to assemble a taco, but I can't finish a cooking class without assembling something. I'm not teaching a skill, I'm actually teaching a recipe, so we're gonna assemble it together. And I just like to use the whole leaves that I just sort of tear and put on top. You can eat the whole cilantro stem, so that's what I do. And then you can just imagine some sliced avocado on top, but there you have it, grain-free, crispy shrimp tacos with a simple honey lime slaw. So good. I hope you guys will make these for a dinner party or just a weeknight at home. Remember, if you don't want to use shrimp, you can always use chicken instead, but obviously, please know that the chicken, whether you do it in small pieces or strips, is going to take a little bit longer in the oven. Probably add about another 10 minutes on there. Make sure it's cooked before you serve it. You could also do this with whitefish as well. I would recommend pan-searing the whitefish instead of putting it on a rack because it might fall through because it is really tender. So I hope you guys will make these. I had so much fun sharing it with you guys today. I will, as always, put the recipe to my stories so you can screenshot it. You can go ahead and make these for yourself. Next week, I will be back making my favorite lemon basil salmon burgers. I've been making these for so many years and I love them. They are great on the grill if you have like a, a rack for seafood. They're delicious on the grill. They are delicious on a pan at home as well, or inside your home as well. And they're perfect for summer. So I'm gonna make those next week. And then the week after, I will be back for our last week for a couple months doing caprese salad with a twist. So I'm excited to see you guys here at same time, same place next week. I kind of want to try this. Should I do a bite? No, I'm just gonna bite the shrimp because I feel like biting the whole taco might get messy. So good. Okay, have a great Thursday, you guys. Thank you so much for being here with me today, and I'll see you guys next week.